Today on PoliTalk, we'll discuss the conflict in Ukraine and get a personal view from Ukrainian LSU students.
Also, we'll explain how this year's Bro Symposium shined a light on how we get our information.
All this and more, PoliTalk starts now. Good evening and welcome to PoliTalk, Newsbeat's political news show. I'm Ariana Prasad.
And I'm Jacob Irving. Thanks for joining us. Louisiana's 2014 legislative session is rolling. The legislature convened today at noon. Lawmakers are set to tackle several hot-button issues such as marijuana, LGBT discrimination, education standards, and abortion. There's a bill that streamlines the application process for all state public colleges and universities by creating one single application. Another bill would allow education management boards to set their own tuition rates. Officials say state lawmakers will work on many issues they do not want to deal with during an election year.
Well, it may not be a big election year for the state legislature, but LSU students will be voting soon. Student government has announced the platforms and students running for student body president, vice president, and senate positions. LSU students Christian Coleman and Ashley Pichon are running for president and vice president, respectively, under the Experience LSU ticket. Clay Tufts and Taylor Lambert are running on a ticket called The Next Step. Elections are March 24th. Stay tuned to Newsbeat for continuing coverage on the candidates and their elections.
The crisis in the Ukraine continues as Russian troops occupy Crimea in Ukraine and world leaders deadlock on how to handle the issue. Tiger TV reporter Eric Toop spoke with current LSU students from the Ukraine to get their take on the situation.
Protesting in Kiev against Ukraine's pro-Russian government turned to rioting when Ukrainian Prime Minister Yanukovych ordered police forces to fire upon the protesters. The violence forced Yanukovych to flee to Russia, and the pro-Western opposition took over. Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to recognize the new government. On March 1st, Russian troops began rolling in and seized operational control of the Crimean region in Ukraine without a fight. President Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry, as well as other world leaders, have condemned Putin, pulling out of the scheduled G8 summit in Russia and threatening economic sanctions if Russia does not cease its operations. Igor Kuznetsov, a Russian student at LSU, had this to say about Russia's actions in Crimea.
As far as I see, according to the media, according to what I read on the news, there is no abandoned violence on the streets, so I think that according to news, there is no need to use forces in Crimea.
The situation in the Ukraine is more complicated than most Westerners realize. Not all Ukrainians are against Russian involvement, and many are very much in favor of it. Ukrainian student Anya Borshval had a pro-Russian mindset about the situation in Ukraine.
Well, I'm from the eastern side of Ukraine, so I'm actually a little bit pro-Russia. I believe that they can help us a lot when it comes to the economy. I am against them kind of invading Crimea at the moment because I feel like that can bring a lot of bloodshed, and my hope is that we can avoid that if all possible.
Ukraine remains heavily divided, with many in eastern Ukraine and Crimea welcoming Russian influence and protesting the new government.
Crimea was once part of Russia until it was ceded to Ukraine in 1954.
Well, it looks like winter decided to turn into spring in Louisiana.
Yeah, right in time for me to have to stay inside and study for midterms. It's rather unfortunate.
We now turn to Christian for our Tiger TV weather. Christian?
Monday was a gorgeous day. It was great to see everyone lounging out on the parade grounds. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and incoming freshmen were touring. Yes, spring is in the air. Highs today reached 76 degrees with lows at 56 degrees. We had a nice breeze with winds at 6 miles per hour. Today's weather photo comes from Megusta. Love to see blue skies over stately oaks. Monday night, we're going to have temperatures around 56 degrees. We'll see wind speeds at 6 miles per hour, and we'll have a 30% chance of rain.
Thanks for watching today's PoliTalk. I'm Lindsay Plaga with the World Report. Earlier today, the Russian Foreign Ministry accused the eastern Ukraine of lawlessness and the West of staying silent about the violence and detentions against Russian citizens. Pro-Russian leaders in Crimea are supported in their moves to break away from Ukraine by Putin. Moscow refuses to recognize the new Ukrainian authorities and has announced the coup that ousted Yankovych as illegitimate. Germany's Merkel told Putin by phone that the planned Crimea referendum to join Russia is illegal and would violate Ukraine's constitution. This Saturday, President Obama met with world leaders to demand Russia de-escalate the situation. Washington has also warned Moscow that the door to diplomacy could be closed if they make any moves to annex Crimea. In Asia, rescue officials searching for a plane that went missing 3 days ago have expanded their search area to include a larger part of the Gulf of Thailand between Malaysia and Vietnam. There have been no signs of the missing aircraft, and family members of passengers and crew are being told to prepare for the worst. The aircraft was carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members. Adding to the mystery, it was discovered that at least 2 passengers were traveling on stolen Austrian and Italian passports. At this point, the reason for the plane's disappearance is pure speculation. 5 of the passengers were under 5 years old. In Siberia, scientists have had more luck making discoveries. They've uncovered a giant virus more than 30,000 years old. The virus is harmless to people, but the scientists who made the discovery have warned that thawing permafrost in polar regions due to climate change or mining could threaten human health. France's National Center for Scientific Research has stated that the reemergence of other viruses is no longer in the domain of science fiction. Viruses that have been considered eradicated, like smallpox, may become reason for concern once more. What makes the virus giant has to do with its genes. Dwarf viruses, like the ones that cause AIDS contain about 10 genes. A giant virus like this one contains about 500. Thanks for watching.
50 years ago, U.S. Supreme Court decision set the standard that must be met if news reports on public officials can be considered libel. The fallout from this Supreme Court case, New York Times versus Sullivan, was the focus earlier this week during the LSU Manship School's annual Bro Symposium. Reporter Gabriella Chauvin tells us how the case has affected how we receive information today.
LSU welcomes the 2014 John Bro Symposium 50 years later. The focus on the event brought the question, how well is the public being informed and what must be done to increase awareness and debate? Many students, including LSU sophomore Kristen White, attended the event.
Well, I'm here for my Mass Comm Honors Media Law class, and we just recently learned about Times versus Sullivan and how it relates to journalism as a whole.
Speakers included First Woman Governor of Louisiana, Kathleen Blanco, Dean of the Manship School, Jerry Sepos, visiting law professor Paul Finkelman, former VP of the New York Times, James Goodale, ethics and law professor Jane Kirtley, Dr. Regina Lawrence, Amy Reynolds, and Jack Weiss, Chancellor of the LSU Law Center.
And it's really interesting hearing professional opinions on how that case has evolved and developed the First Amendment rights and stuff in today's society with, with online stuff and social media, Twitter, Facebook, and all that. So I feel like it's really interesting to hear about it.
For those who could not attend the event, we're constantly being informed through social media. Those in the audience were using the Twitter hashtag Bro14.
The event consisted of the origins of the case New York Times v. Sullivan, connecting the case's roots in the civil rights movement in the South, and the articles from the New York Times. Thursday consisted of 3 panels to discuss the case for media and the law through social media. For Tiger TV, I'm Gabriella Chauvin.
The annual symposium began in 2009, and according to the Riley Center's website, it is meant to explore topics with little to no research and approach ideas from a fresh perspective.
A University of Connecticut sophomore says her sorority sisters forced her to drink to the point of blacking out. Hillary Holt says she was forced to participate in drinking challenges until she eventually ended up in the hospital Thursday night. The alleged incident happened after her initiation into Kappa Kappa Gamma. Holt has since filed a police report and says she may be filing a lawsuit. She also says she's all but done with the sorority. University of Connecticut officials say they are currently investigating the incident.
Before we sign off, let's take one last look at this week's weather with weather reporter Christian Bennett. Christian?
Well, Tuesday we're going to see some clouds roll in. We'll have a 60% chance of rain with the possibility of thunderstorms into the evening. The temperatures will remain warm though, with highs at 68 degrees and lows at 57 degrees. Wind speeds will reach 9 miles per hour. Just make sure to grab those raincoats and umbrellas for class Tuesday. Luckily, those showers are going to clear out pretty quickly, and we'll get back to the beautiful weather we enjoyed Monday. This week, we'll see temperatures in the 60s and lots of sunshine. That's your forecast. Keep it here for all your most up-to-date weather posts. And post your weather photos to Instagram with the hashtag TigerTVWeather.
That's all of the time we have for PoliTalk today. You can catch our full shows online at tigertv.tv or on our YouTube channel.
And be sure to connect with us on Facebook and Twitter for our latest updates.
From all of us at PoliTalk, thank you for joining us.
And have a great evening, Tigers.